Sagittarius rising. Uranus has been transiting through your 6th house of Taurus over the last 8 years, since 2018. This has been shaking up, waking up your house of daily routines, well-being, health, nutrition, small pets, and perhaps your relationship to some of those topics has drastically changed over the last 8 years. Perhaps you started 2018 with a menagerie of animals or a well-stocked grocery cupboard, and now you come to 2026 and some of the animals have moved on. Maybe you've had to downsize, or maybe you've even increased because you've realized that actually connecting with animals, connecting with nature, maybe expanding the land that you own, maybe going from like a home garden to like a small farm or a small holding, has been a thing that's drastically increased your ability to cater for animals and these creature beings and more nature and trees and plants. Maybe you've started working on an allotment, maybe you've got a veg patch, and maybe you're growing much more of your own food. Maybe the opportunity to do that came in a very expected way. You've been offered a much stronger sense of freedom in terms of your connection to nature. Perhaps you started Uranus in Taurus back in 2018, just growing a few seeds in a window box in your home. And now you have got a small holding that you are moving into and expanding much more this idea of like nourishment from a very kind of homegrown organic sense. And Taurus is this zodiac sign that doesn't like change because it's a fixed earth sign. So changing up your daily routines has not necessarily been a comfortable experience, but now we're coming to the end of changing up those daily routines. You're realizing that a lot of those shifts needed to be made to propel you into this current version of yourself, which feels much freer and more expansive and more available to try new foods, try growing new plants. Maybe you've always grown lettuces and now you're going to start growing aduki beans. Do they grow in the UK? I don't know. Maybe you wanted to grow chickpeas and you found that carlin peas are a much more ancient form of pea that do the same kind of job. You can still turn it into hummus, and it grows much more prolifically in the UK, and it's much happier with the UK environment. Obviously, I'm filming this from the UK, so adjust for where you are in the world and your plant choices. So Uranus is moving into the sign of Gemini, Sagittarius rising, in your 7th house of relationships, marriage, one-to-one partnerships. This can be contracts in the 7th house. This can be business partners, and this is close relationships. And so we're shaking up and waking up how you relate to people on a one-to-one basis. Do you find that you need to have that daily interaction with other people? Gemini is a very curious sign. So Gemini ruling your 7th house needs to have a lot of interaction with lots of different people. And perhaps your relationships will reflect that idea. Maybe you're moving into a period of time where you are no longer in a one-to-one couple setup, but you're in a much more expansive couple setup, which is not a couple but a throuple or a quadruple, or whatever terminology you'd like to use. Gemini is ultimately curious. Maybe there will be a lot more communication with partners and business partners, that maybe there will be more information sharing. Maybe you join a music group together, maybe you start a band with your partner, maybe you start going to gigs more regularly. There's something about your house of relationships and therapy which is undergoing a dynamic change and redirection, which will look quite different in 8 years' time to how it looks now at the beginning of this Uranus in Gemini transit. Your 7th house, where Uranus in Gemini will ingress on Monday, the 27th of April, is in a sextile aspect to your 5th house of Aries. The sextile aspect is the nature of Venus, which means there is a harmonious flow between your house of relationships and your house of fun and creativity. This is another relationship house because this is the house where we find romance and playfulness and the way that we like to be creative and have fun. This is also the house of children and the house of creativity. And so with a lot of Aries activation in the 5th house right now, Sagittarius rising, there is the opportunity to try new things in terms of children. Perhaps you're thinking about having children. Perhaps you're thinking about making children more part of your life, a bigger part of your life. Perhaps you're thinking about trying new creative pursuits. Maybe you want to start a new hobby. Perhaps you want to take on a new activity at the gym that involves being strong. So like weightlifting, for example, or something that really gets the blood pumping. That's quite an Aries thing. Something that requires, maybe you want to get into acting, maybe you want to be on the stage and being very playful in this fifth house creative pursuit. And maybe you try different ways of doing that before you land on the thing that really works for you. But there's something about music or writing, reading, maybe you want to write a book. That could be encouraged by this astrology. Maybe you want to write some music, maybe you want to write poetry, maybe you want to take photographs. There's something about writing and communications, letters on a page or social media that is really feeding into your sense of fun over the coming 8 years, Sagittarius rising.